Mark, thanks for chatting with me this morning. Of course, the greenhouse gases got another go this morning, and we all are conscious of this. But I noticed that Anthony Albanese arrived at the studio and departed in a CO2 emitting greenhouse gas problematic Commonwealth a chauffeur-driven Commonwealth limo when there is a tram stop at the front door of the ABC. Now, I reckon that people should try and practice what they preach. Is that a fair comment, do you think?
Well, look, I think it's always people are always open to be accountable for the decisions they make.
Right.
And if you are advocating one thing, then I suppose it's always going to be some area where you're vulnerable if you're not sort of living those values.
Absolutely.
Well, but he might argue that he is in a whole lot of other ways. I mean, obviously he has to go from here to the airport. He has to do so quite quickly, one imagines. That is the way our MPs get around. There's employment and all those other things.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, he did make the point in the interview that there is no significant car manufacturer anywhere in the world that is not investigating.
Indeed, I agree.
The sort of what comes after the internal combustion engine. They're all planning to do hybrid cars or electric drive cars.
Right,
or whatever.
absolutely.
So, I mean, those options will change, and the investment dollars are going into that. It's just that perhaps we need some more stable policy settings to really encourage those things to happen.
Mate, I was in Hong Kong a couple of years ago, and I was absolutely astounded at the number of Teslas that I saw on the roads in Hong Kong. Every second car. Well, indeed.
And they are expensive.
But I did subsequently hear that part of the reason for that was that there was a 50% government subsidy on the purchase of electric vehicles.
Right.
And the well-heeled citizens of Hong Kong were using that subsidy to get themselves into a Tesla at significant expense to other people who don't have their resources. And the intriguing thing also to me was after I got back to Australia, I read a report that said that the government had stopped the subsidy and the sales of Teslas absolutely went off a cliff. So it's poor taxpayers subsidising the motoring habits of the rich and famous.
Well, that's one interpretation of habit. It's a legitimate point. It is an absolutely legitimate point, I concede that. But it is also a tale of how policy can drive investment, and that wasn't a very good example of it. But you can also see some other social benefits from it. For example, they're worried in Hong Kong, as they are in many cities, particularly the big Asian cities, about air pollution.
Absolutely.
Getting fewer cars on the road, getting more people to use electric power, even though a lot of that is generated originally from coal, but perhaps away from the conurbate, from the cities and so forth.
Right.
You can improve the air quality. So, I think that this is such a politically charged area, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be anywhere near as politically charged as it is.
Fair comment. Now, I've actually owned two Toyota Camry hybrids assembled in Australia. I doubt that they were fully constructed in Australia. I go to the government auctions every 9 to 12 months and buy an updated car. And I had these two Toyota Camry hybrids, which were bloody fantastic cars, economical, comfortable, technology up the wazoo. But after I sold the second one, I went back for a third one, and the cabbies had got onto them, and the prices went so high I couldn't bring myself. Absolutely. So look, at currently the level of technology, it's a wealthy person's or an extremely well-off person's situation at present. And look, we all hope that the future will be better than our past.
These are all good points. I agree. There's no doubt that the wealthy people are able to they have the capacity to make those decisions. Having said that, there is some research that shows, I understand, that a lot of the take-up of solar PV around Australia is happening in suburbs that aren't the most well-off.
Okay.
And it's because the price signal of high electricity prices is actually having an effect.
And subsidies, perhaps, as well.
Well, exactly. If the subsidy scheme is going to close, you want to get in and do it before that, subsidy scheme does close. So that definitely makes it more economic, and particularly if you are running a household that doesn't have a lot of spare capacity, you have to think about, well, can I sustain the capital cost of this investment? Having said that, if the payback period is coming down,
right,
we see the take-up of these things. So, it's one of these things where, you do have to look out for what they call perverse outcomes of policy, where, the well-off who can afford it anyway, just
That's
game
right.
the system.
That's right.
But on the other hand, you also don't want to just throw up your hands and say, therefore we shouldn't be doing anything. You just got to design the policy better.
Okay.
And I think that's...
Do you think the coal industry gets subsidies?
Well, it has in the past in terms of tax breaks.
Such as?
Well, tax breaks. I'm
Well,
not an expert on that.
Startup costs are not a tax break. They until the entity starts to turn a profit, whatever they spent to open up the mine is there for carry forward losses to offset
and
when
they
they
pay royalties. And so
That's
forth.
right.
And
People say, oh, they're diesel fuel rebate. Well, that's not a subsidy.
it is.
It's the diesel fuel rebate. The diesel fuel excise is to fund the construction of roads by a tax on the people that use the roads. Now, the mines argued successfully that their use of the diesel fuel was off-road, so they shouldn't have to pay the excise, and so they got a rebate. And look, I can see all sides of lots of arguments, but I've never bought the argument that coal companies and mineral companies get subsidies. I just don't think that's a reasonable reference to what actually goes on in the tax system.
Well, that's another debate you can have, and I think you make some good points there. There's an argument about who owns the resources to begin with, and whether those resources are being, whether the
community is getting the benefit,
especially when the price peaks. That's what the resource profits tax was about, and of course we know the way that went. We know what the resources sector did in response to that. We know how poorly it was advocated by the Labor government at the time. I think it was even, my criticism at the time was that it was a solution looking for a problem in a sense.
Okay.
That's the way it felt to a lot of voters because they didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And suddenly here's the government advocating this whole new tax, and I think that made it very hard for Labor to sell it.
Yeah.
And there may have been some problems with it, but again, I go back to this point. Just because one policy is bad doesn't mean that the object of that policy was not worth pursuing. You just got to do it properly.
Mate, thank you very much for your time this morning.